Welcome back to another video on the Winning Browns podcast. I am Yash Talalekar, and today we're going to be talking about my 2025 NFL draft rankings for the quarterback selection. And I'll be honest, this was a very weird quarterback draft class, not nearly as top heavy nor nearly as deep as last year's. And I'll start off by saying right off the bat, if I'm being honest, I don't know that I would draft any quarterback given how sought after the quarterback position is in this day and age in the NFL in the first round. I really don't. I think that there are guys who are talented, but I think all of the quarterbacks who I think have somewhat first round potential are projects, and I just would not risk drafting them that high. And that includes some guys who I have first round grades on, and that includes some guys who I'm also very high on. But for what it stands right now, I still think pretty highly of this 2025 NFL quarterback class compared to, say, the 2022 draft class, where that one was just weak as hell. This one, to me, I still think has a lot more depth. I think you're talking about guys who, even if they don't turn out to become franchise quarterbacks, at the very worst, they're backup quarterbacks for a long time. I look at this draft class and say that there are a lot of guys who are good in the right system, but they're so system dependent, I don't know that they would fit in any team's system. And that, I think, makes this draft class a lot more interesting than last year's, whereas last year I think it was about comparing the top six and then comparing the guys after that. But this year there is a lot more variety in quarterbacks too, and for that reason I think that this year it's going to be especially interesting to see how many quarterbacks go in the second and third round compared to the first round. But let's get started. We'll start off at number 10. I'm going to go with Riley Leonard. I'm not as high on Riley Leonard when it comes to him being a full-time quarterback. I feel he's more of a Swiss Army knife. He's a really good dual threat quarterback, and I feel like he'd be best fit playing in a Terrell Pryor type role, at least what Terrell Pryor was in his first year with the Raiders. Riley Leonard is decent as far as getting his reads off. Nothing spectacular by any means. He's not particularly the most quick as far as reading the football field. He really benefits off of Notre Dame's kind of simplistic offense, and I think Duke kind of did similar things for him. He's great at running the ball, but he is good as far as the short and intermediate passing game goes. I think that he has an adequately strong enough arm to be a backup for a long time. But as far as his footwork, as far as his overall poise goes, those are things that I like more from him. But I do think that this is a guy who his poise does get kind of flustered when he gets a lot more pressure. He's not one of those guys who can definitely stand in the pocket and just command a throw. Neither is a guy who really relies on playmaking outside the pocket. If he's getting hit or there's pressure in his face, he will just run. And he's not a guy who throws accurately under pressure. He's not a guy who really throws that many times in tight windows. But he's definitely a guy who can hurt you in more than one ways. And from that standpoint, I think he can definitely be a very dangerous weapon for a lot of teams who are looking in the sixth or maybe fifth round max. I don't think he should be drafted any higher than the late fifth round. I would personally draft in the sixth or seventh round. I think that he would be great backup or third string to be able to at least try out in a practice squad, at least try out as far as a dual threat option and see where you go from there. At number 9, we're going to go with Quinn Ewers. I was really high on him going into this year, and to be honest, he disappointed me in every single way. I just don't think he's that good anymore. Everything that I was kind of banking on for him to, take a next step, nothing really kind of panned out. His accuracy was all over the place. His reads were terrible. anything that was supposed to be what we're supposed to rely on as far as talent for a quarterback too, it seemed to almost kind of downgrade every year that he was there with Texas. The first year he seemed to be great as far as taking hits, pocket presence, footwork, vision overall on the football field, and being able to see different reads and different schemes that defenses threw on at him. And now it just seems like, number one, his arm talent is not there. His mobility is completely lacking, and overall Quinn Ewers has just become more of a passive quarterback as far as his ability to make big time NFL type throws. He's become a lot less efficient on third downs. I think that he's not as great when it comes to situational football as he was last year, especially what we saw against Washington. I think he showed that when Isaiah Bond got injured, that he definitely relied a lot more on his receivers than his receivers relied on him. And from that standpoint, I just don't think Quinn Ewers, athletically or even just technical standpoint, is really has really stepped up or done anything to improve his draft stock, and is completely downgraded, whereas some other guys have improved their draft stock a lot more than him, and have showed out in the combine, whereas I just don't think he had a very pedestrian showing at pretty much any post NFL or pre-draft process event. So for me, Quinn Ewers is at number 9 for that reason. At number 8, we're going to go with Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel impressed me a lot when I saw his 2023 film. I felt like Oregon's offense kind of simplified him in the same way it did with Bo Nix. I still think that he is not nearly as good of a quarterback as Bo Nix. I think he takes off and runs a little bit too much after looking his first read, although he's really good at getting through his progressions, and that too, really good at getting through his progressions quick. But he's extremely reliant on that deep ball or that short pass game. He's a guy who can't really throw accurately in the deep ball pass. I don't really have a problem with any of his velocity or zip. I don't even really have a problem with the way he reads the field in the middle of the field. I just really think it comes down to the fact that he can throw a lot more accurate. I've seen several instances where he's running outside the pocket, getting rushed, and he'll throw over the head on the tight end, and I'll be thinking, he could have easily thrown that in the face of the tight end or right in the chest. I think that he needs to work on that a lot more. I think at times he can be extremely reliant on the check down rather than actually being able to wait a couple more seconds, be a little more patient, rely on his presence as a quarterback, and then either unload deep or find someone in the middle of the field, which I don't think he's particularly good at. The good thing is that he is, as far as measurables go, he is outstanding. I say that sarcastically, in case any of you wonder. There's really nothing that you can say that kind of wows you about him athletically. As far as measurables, his arm length is average, his wingspan's average, his height, weight is average, his arm talent is average. Athletically, he looks more athletic on tape than he actually is. He runs about the same 40 time as Baker Mayfield. He really relies on his football IQ, and I think that can limit him in some sense. But I think his processing, I think his ability to recognize coverages down the field, his ability to adjust to rotations and, use his body and manipulate defensive backs accordingly. I think that really is what, kind of separates him as a quarterback, especially with the lack of, athletic gifts he has. He's still able to generate, pretty good velocity on his footballs, and has great mechanics. He's a great leader. So I have no doubt about if he's a backup for the rest of his career. I think that at the very least he will be a great locker room player for any team. And I think he can fit in multiple different offenses. He's played in spread, air raid, pro style. I think what it really comes down to, however, is just the fact that, I'm not high on his tendencies. I'm not high on his athletic gifts, and I think that there are better guys who do the same things that he does in the NFL. At number 7, I'm going to go with Will Howard. I like Will Howard. I actually do. And I did not like Will Howard going into the season. He impressed me a lot this year. I think he makes a lot of really, really solid throws at the NFL level. He's a big guy. He's 6'4", 230 something pounds. He can throw the ball deep. He isn't the most mobile per se, but if he is on a roll, he is on a roll. And he's got great mechanics. He's got great arm strength. He could throw at all 3 levels. He's fantastic at the play action. He reminds me a little bit of a Joe Flacco right now. And he's got great footwork. What it really comes down to, though, I think, is just he's athletically limited as far as just overall mobility. I think overall kind of hip movement and pocket pocket awareness. I think he's a little tight at the hips, and I think that he can be a little bit inconsistent with his mechanics, and I think that's what's going to limit him at the next level. The other thing I would say is the fact that I don't think he particularly has the most creativity when it comes to manipulation of reads. I think he played a lot in the Ryan Day offense, and I think Ryan Day kind of maximized his skill set best, which was throw the ball deep and kind of run when necessary, and a lot of those runs were designed for Ohio State. But I also don't think he's great, particularly outside the pocket. I think that's been shown on several instances. I think that has to be kind of manufactured for him as far as overall play calling goes. And I mean, Ryan Day is one of the elite play callers in college football. It hurts me to say that, being that I hate Ohio State. But yes, I mean, he is undoubtedly one of the best play callers in the league, and I think he maximized what Will Howard is great at, which is play action, throw the ball deep, and footwork type plays. And for that reason, I think Will Howard definitely is a project for a lot of teams. I can very well see him going late 3rd round, maybe early 4th round, maybe a little bit earlier too, and I wouldn't be mad at that. But I also don't think that he's going to come without some really, really tough problems to deal with at the next level, as far as just being able to kind of weed out some of the technical issues that he has. But the next guy that I have is Jalen Milroe. I like Jalen Milroe a lot. I really do, and I was really having a tough time figuring out where to place him. At first, I had him as high as number 1. I really did. I mean, I think he's good, and I think he has the biggest boom or bust potential of any quarterback in this draft class. So I could be very much wrong about this, and I will be glad if I am wrong, because I want this guy to succeed. I'm rooting for him. He's probably one of my favorite Alabama players, and that's hard to say because I don't like Alabama football too. But Jalen Milroe has put his team on his back in several games where they should not have been. In 2023, if his 2023 tape is really, really solid. I think it's much better than his 24 tape. I think his 24 tape is especially relying on those first 4 or 5 games, and then he starts to kind of struggle afterwards. But he's got insane measurables. He's a big guy who can move really, really fast. He's 6'2", 225 pounds, and runs a 4.37. I mean, he is just extremely athletic. He's got a strong arm. He's got incredible acceleration. He has home run ability when it comes to rushing, and I think he can challenge some of the best running quarterbacks in the league right off the bat if he gets a chance. He's got great lower body strength, and I think that helps him shrug off sacks in the pocket. He's great as far as his pocket presence overall, and I think that really gets underrated. I think that he's able to move around better than a lot of players think in the pocket and recognize when pressure's coming from a blind side. I think that he's great at being able to process zone coverage and find soft spots and manipulate defenders. I think he's a much smarter player than people think. What it really comes down to me is I don't think he was given as much ability to be able to fully read the field. I think his offense was kind of simplified where you only had to look at one or two reads, and I don't know whether that's a problem where he can't read the field, or is it a problem of did the offense just simplify it because that was what it needed? Because we've seen other Alabama quarterbacks who are really good at reading the field, like Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, and Bryce Young. But Jalen Milroe didn't have that, and that makes me question why he didn't. But we've seen his processing ability as a quarterback, and it's definitely there. I mean, he can manipulate defenders really well. His IQ is off the charts as far as being able to see things pre-snap. But it just comes down to he's only looking at one or two reads, and that's just not going to work in the NFL. And I think that if that could be, and for me as a person who's kind of like an armchair quarterback analyst in this circumstance and this situation, I've just not seen enough of those players to really make a full evaluation. Now, if Jalen Milroe or the other guy who I was kind of skeptical on this for the same reason was last year, Jordan Travis, if any of those guys succeed, in the future, guys like Jalen Milroe will definitely be a lot higher. But right now, I think I'm trying to play it safe by just putting Jalen Milroe at 6. I think it's fair to put him at 6 for those reasons, and for the fact that his 2024 was a lot worse than his 2023. The fact that his tape got worse also kind of makes me feel a little more safe in putting him number 6. But I'm not mad if anybody puts him even number 1, because I understand why, and I had him at 1 at 1.2. But at number 5, we're going to go with Cam Ward. And I know this is going to be surprising for a lot of people. I am not on the Cam Ward bandwagon whatsoever. Watching his film again, there was just nothing that really stood out to me other than the fact that he throws kind of like Patrick Mahomes, and he's a little funky and a little casual, and has a little bit of a backyard style football. Plays a little bit of a backyard style football. But other than that, I mean, Cam Ward, there's really nothing to me that stands out. His footwork is really sloppy. And I don't mean just because he's playing casual. Otherwise, it's really sloppy. There are times where you can see he's, evidently stumbling in the pocket. And I think that is a big problem. I think he's not as far as advanced when it comes to 5 or 7 step dropbacks. I think he's, heavily reliant on throwing off his back foot rather than just being able to kind of lean or adjust his footwork. His base is very inconsistent, and I think that his deep ball can kind of be sacrificed because of that at times. I think that, he doesn't have the greatest base when it comes to being pressured. Ball security is really a concern for him. He had 8 fumbles in 2024, in spite of the fact that, his pocket awareness is getting better. He handles protection really well within the pocket and can see things that most other quarterbacks can't see. But it just seems like one of those guys who's just, at the end of the day, he more looks the part than he actually is the part. He's got great arm talent. He's got great mental processing. He's explosive as far as, athleticism. He's got accuracy on all 3 levels, all when the conditions are good. But he's got one of the best offensive lines in the game. The minute the pressure came in, his accuracy was all over the place. Honestly, he did a better job with that in Carte Word than he did Washington State, and he did a better job at Washington State than he did in Miami. And I feel like, in a way, he's kind of gotten worse as a quarterback as far as his casualness, which doesn't necessarily bother me. I think that can be coached out of him if he's well coached. I don't know what his attitude per se is. I've heard differing things on that. I'm not really going to speak on that because I don't have, there's no true pattern around it. It just seems more like speculation. The one thing I will say is, of my own interpretation, I was not a big fan of him playing only the first half of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. If I were in his situation, I would have either played the entirety of the Pop-Tarts Bowl or not played at all. I don't like the idea of only playing one half. If I was his teammate, I'd really feel like he quit on us, or he's playing selfish football, and that just doesn't rub a good look. And I know a lot of GMs might, at least, even if they don't feel the same way, they'll definitely raise that question one way or another. I don't think that's a big deal in the grand schemes of things, at least from a person who's on the outside looking in from the NFL organization. Maybe other teams or other scouts have more insight than I do. But at the end of the day, I just don't think that he can do as much when, pressure comes in his face. We saw what happened against his more superior opponents, teams like Syracuse, teams like Oregon and Washington last year had him struggle, especially Oregon. In spite of the fact that he played well, on tape he just wasn't as as dynamic of a player as he was against against worse defenses. I just think that at the end of the day, Cam Ward is one of those players that looks the part but is not the part. So for me, he comes in at number 5 for that reason. At number 4, I'm going to go with Kyle McCord. I think this guy has completely changed his trajectory from last year. Last year, I was not high on him whatsoever. I thought he might enter the draft. Quite frankly, the fact that he came back for another year, good on him, and I really like that, and I think he improved his draft stock a lot, and I think that now we're talking about a guy who definitely has second-round potential. Kyle McCord is fantastic from the pocket. He is fantastic. He's got great arm strength on all 3 levels, very underrated velocity, in my opinion. He's got fantastic footwork. Maybe not the best footwork, but, he definitely is able to move around the pocket, get the ball out quickly, especially within like 25 to 30 yards. He is able to, kind of manipulate defenders and find tight windows and, look for post routes, deep go routes, seam routes, and really his ball placement doesn't get, you don't get any better than that, what he can do on some of those plays. He can really recognize on pre-snap. He's great at being able to manipulate coverages. He's got great ability as far as his ability to read progressions. He's great as far as quick processing. He slides really well. I think playing in the Big Ten kind of helped in this department. He's got, maybe not the best arm strength, but like I said, great velocity, and, the deep ball is sweet every time. It constantly is hitting the receivers in their hands. He throws anticipatory throws. He doesn't throw reactionary throws. He's great at throwing on any route, and he's a great leader. What it really comes down to me, I think the big thing is the only time where you'd see him missing throws is when his mechanics deteriorate. And I think this is especially the case when he leaves the pocket. And under heavy pressure, he can kind of screw up things. But it's specifically when his footwork struggles that he becomes a much, much worse quarterback. I think he also has kind of that Justin Fields syndrome where he's not necessarily, he's not bad. By no means is he bad as far as getting through his reads. But he has this stubbornness of trying to make something happen and trying to make a play happen with his first read. So he stays way too long on his first read before realizing, hey, his second and third read are wide open, and then he's making a desperate play or throwing across his body. So it's really decision making that he really needs to clean up, and I think he's limited as far as his overall athleticism and his ability outside the pocket. But I think he's more athletic than some of the other guys in this draft. Even for a guy who I don't think per se runs the fastest 40, I think at the very least he still has great pocket mobility and ability to evade sacks, which I think is the more important thing for quarterbacks. And I think that really kind of just fits into Kyle McCord's game. So at the very worst, he becomes a backup as a great pocket passer. But if he can kind of just, play in an offense that is widely oriented on a good offensive line and just making him a pocket passer, which is kind of rare nowadays with how good pass rushers are, I could very well see him becoming a solid quarterback in the NFL, maybe a franchise quarterback. But I think that's limited because of his athleticism. But I could see it, which is why I have him at number 4 for that reason. At number 3, I'm going to go Jackson Dart. I think he's a more athletic quarterback than Kyle McCord, but same things. He is great as far as his ability to get through reads, quick processor, manipulating, and can throw at different routes. I don't think he's as good at throwing every route as Kyle McCord is per se. I think that Lane Kiffin's offense can kind of simplify things where he's only throwing maybe 2 or 3 routes. But I think that at the very least, he is able to handle pressure very well, withstand it, and still throw an accurate ball in a tight window, which is what I'm looking for most out of my quarterbacks. He is sneaky athletic as far as his ability. Once he gets out of the pocket, he has this ability to kind of stutter and leave a defender to kind of, wait on him before he makes the move. And by the time the linebacker kind of realizes what's up, he's already 4 or 5 yards down the field ahead of them. He's great at improvising. He's great as far as understanding RPOs, screen passes. He's great at, at times he can be inconsistent on different levels of the field, but I think that his overall arm strength kind of makes up for that. I think that his toughness is definitely going to help him at the next level to be able to withstand some of the big hits that he got in the SEC, but he's going to get a lot more with his overall play style, and he's great at being able to run through design runs. What it really comes down to is when his mechanics are not good, he overthrows everything. And his decision-making is kind of like Kyle McCord's in the sense where once he's outside the pocket, it just goes all over the place, and he flusters, and he overthinks things and either runs too quick, doesn't see a read, is too stubborn, or in his case, it's more he gets through his progressions way too quick and then overthrows a guy and it becomes an interception, which is rare. But I think it helps that Lane Kiffin was his play caller for that reason, because all he really needed to do was get the ball out quick and throw quickly. And from that way, I think Lane Kiffin kind of helped him in ways that might not be beneficial to his development at the next level. But at the very least, he's a guy who can kind of still play within the pocket and still has more talent than Kyle McCord outside the pocket, where I still think he is very much a capable quarterback at the next level. And I think there's an argument for him to be a first-round quarterback, and I can very well see it. But yes, he comes in at number 3. I would personally draft him in the early second round, if I was a team. I wouldn't draft him because I would hopefully want to draft a guy who I think is a franchise quarterback fully. Guys like Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar Jackson. And I don't think Dart is that. But if I was in that situation where I need to draft a quarterback from this draft class, where I would draft Jackson Dart, I would draft him in the second round. At number 2, this is going to be a shocker to a lot of you. It was a shock to me. Kind of a play on his word. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it sounds like Tyler Shock. I think it's Tyler Shog. I'm not sure really how to pronounce it. Different commentators pronounce it different ways. I've always pronounced his name Tyler Show, which I think is wrong. whatever his name is, he is really, 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 really underrated. And he has played a long time in college football, damn near 7 years. He played at Oregon for a long time, but he really found his footing this past year with Louisville. I think that Louisville offense really fit him, really fit his ability to throw on all three levels. His intermediate passing game is flawless. I don't really see there being a flaw there at all. I think really what it comes down to is certain tendencies in the deep ball passing game or the short passing game. But this is not a guy whose, problems come from getting flustered per se, which is why I have him as high as I do. He's a great athlete, extremely mobile. He's good at both spread offense and pro style. He's great as far as pre-snap. He's good at understanding defensive leverage, manipulating coverage. He's got fantastic mechanics. Great at kind of artificially generating velocity that he doesn't himself have. He's got quick release. He's able to throw in multiple different arm angles. Even under pressure, he's able to throw the deep ball flawlessly. He's very efficient as far as touchdown to interception ratio, makes good decisions on situation develop. Really what it comes down to is the fact that he's had a lot of injuries and he is very old already, being 25 years of age. Those are the big concerns, that he can end up not playing for as long. But what it really comes down to is the fact that I still think that Tyler Shaw is not as good outside the pocket as I would want to out of a guy who I was as impressed with. I think what he does outside the pocket really well is heavily reliant on play action. And for that reason, I think that Tyler Shaw, as good as I think he is in a lot of different systems, especially in this day and age where, offense is heavily reliant on play action, which kind of fits in his bill, he could end up maybe being a Brock Purdy. But I still think that he doesn't have the creativity outside the pocket to be able to make the play to put him number one. So for that reason, at number one, I'm going to go with Shedeur Sanders. Honestly, I'm not as happy that I have Sanders number one as I would want to be for a number one quarterback, because he also still has his flaws. I think he's a very capable quarterback, but he's also, in my opinion, the last man standing, and that's why he's number one. And that's never a good sign when you're trying to look for a franchise quarterback, especially a guy who may be drafted as high as he is. I think Shedeur Sanders is kind of sloppy as far as his footwork. I think Shedeur Sanders is heavily reliant on a clean pocket, despite the fact he didn't get that a lot. I think he is a type of guy who relies more on his athleticism and getting his receivers open via his athleticism rather than just his overall ability to read the field and just make a damn good throw at times. But he's got great vision. He's got great accuracy. All the raw tools you look for in a quarterback, he has all of those. And he can locate and be able to relocate a receiver better than anybody in this draft class. And we saw that with the Hail Mary, and we saw that with his ability to move outside the pocket, and his ability to take that and be able to process the field both pre-snap and during the snap, and then work through his progressions. That's what makes him a next level quarterback. And I think on top of that, you add in the fact that his completion percentage was as high as it was. He is so accurate. And we have to talk about the fact that at the end of the day, he had the worst offensive line in all of college football. And he was still able to get plays off like this every time. And that's something you don't see from even some of the best quarterbacks coming out of college. Guys like Lamar and Joe Burrow, a lot of the times they had clean pockets when they played. The only guys who you couldn't really say that is really the only guy you could say that is Patrick Mahomes. But Patrick Mahomes was throwing a lot more accurate. I don't think Shedeur Sanders per se has as strong of an arm, but he has an arm that's good enough. He's efficient enough. He is good as far as situation football. He's good as far as his command and his overall leadership. Although at times people criticize his what's the word? Presumed immaturity. I don't know if that's, again, much like Cam Ward, I don't know if that actually is true. I don't quite frankly believe that. I've seen his teammates quite frankly, go out there to war with him. I've seen him defend his teammates on several instances that most other quarterbacks wouldn't. I think he needs to work as far as maybe being a little bit more politically correct in the media. But that's something, coaches can teach that. That has no really bearing on his overall skill set as an NFL quarterback. So I'm not really worried about that whatsoever. I'm not a GM, so I don't really have to worry about that anyways. But what it comes down to is his release, his arm angles, his mechanics, his base, flawless. His ability to play make outside and inside the pocket, great. What it really comes down to, though, is he is still raw. I think that he either can be extremely stubborn and kind of relying on what his arm talent is and kind of overestimating it and trying to throw into windows that aren't even there, that he thinks are there. I think he can be a little too stubborn with his ability to kind of play make. I think that he needs to work more as far as, getting rid of the ball when he is in a bad situation and actually finding the accurate player instead of kind of just trying to make a wonky play over and over again. And I think on top of that, it comes down to, with Shedeur Sanders, how many times can you throw into a tight window if everyone's in your face the whole time? Because like I said, he relies more on his athleticism to get a receiver open than trying to just throw in the tight window. And that's not going to work at the NFL because everybody is more athletic. And the one other thing I think will get better at the next level. I think he just needs to overall be able to work on kind of recognizing new different type of defensive schemes. I think he didn't get a lot, obviously, moving into FBS from FCS level. But I think that can definitely be coached, so I'm not really concerned about that. So for Shedeur Sanders, I think he's a very raw prospect. I think that he has definitely the highest ceiling of the bunch. That's why I'm putting him number one. But he also has some things that he especially needs to work on, and I don't think his ceiling is nearly as high as any of the quarterbacks last year. I don't think it's nearly as high as some of the franchise quarterbacks we see right now, but I still think at the very least he can end up being maybe like a Dak Prescott, who's still at times one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but still usually around the 10 to 12 area of quarterbacks. Still a franchise quarterback, and for that reason, Shedeur Sanders is my number one quarterback. But that wraps up the video. Let me know what you guys think. I know it shocked me going through this entire list, kind of putting together my rankings. A lot of things I didn't expect going into the draft process, or even before I started even evaluating any of these quarterbacks or any of these players. Quarterback usually for me is the most interesting position to evaluate because of all the different constituencies, all the different styles, all the different offensives colleges run nowadays especially. But yeah, this is the overall ranking. Number one, we got Shedeur. Number two, we got Tyler Show or Tyler Shock. I don't know how to pronounce it. Please, someone help me pronounce that. Number three, we got Jackson Dart. Number 4, Kyle McCord. Number 5, Cam Ward. Number 6, Jalen Milroe. Number 7, Will Howard. Number 8, Dylan Gabriel. Number 9, Quinn Ewers. Number 10, Riley Leonard. And remember, guys, I am very likely to get this wrong, but remember the ones that I know I might get wrong or don't. You could just criticize me in hindsight. I really don't. It really doesn't matter. I'm probably going to I take that back. I'm probably going to laugh at myself. I'm probably going to hate myself when I find out that next year Cooper DeJean ends up being the third best cornerback in the entire league, just because he's playing nickelback, or maybe because he's just a good damn cornerback. And that forces me to rearrange my entire way I look at the NFL draft. But in the other way, you might have hot takes like this, and I stand on my word right now, as skeptical as I am, and I think really highly of some players that most other people don't, and I think lesser of some other quarterbacks that people are really high on. And I think that's the exciting thing about the draft for me every year, getting to predict who I think is going to be good and who is not going to be not, and especially the case with the quarterbacks. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Let me know what your guys' top 10 overall quarterbacks are. And, please remember to like and comment, like and subscribe to the channel. And please remember to share this video, please. But until next time, peace.